You know, a country's young people can be its absolute greatest strength or its most crippling weakness. This demographic reality, it's a real double-edged sword, one that can literally define a nation's entire future. So, which is it? A blessing or a burden? Let's get into it.
Just think about that for a second. What if a country's most valuable resource wasn't oil or diamonds or some fancy new technology, but its people? Specifically, millions and millions of young people just brimming with potential. I mean, on the surface, that sounds like a sure bet, right? A guaranteed win. But the reality is a whole lot more complicated than that.
All right, so first things first, we're throwing around this term, youth bulge. What does that actually mean? Let's get a really clear definition down. Okay, so here's the core idea. A youth bulge is basically what it sounds like. It's when children and young adults make up a huge, disproportionate chunk of the population. If you looked at a population chart, it wouldn't be a neat pyramid. It'd have this massive bulge at the bottom. And that imbalance creates this really unique set of pressures and, yeah, opportunities that can either launch a country forward or drag it way, way back.
So let's start with the good stuff, the best case scenario. This is what economists get really excited about. They call it the demographic dividend. This is the dream, where that massive surge of young people fuels an incredible wave of economic prosperity.
So how does this actually happen? Well, it can create this powerful, positive domino effect. It all kicks off with a massive new generation entering the workforce. Now, this huge talent pool can be incredibly appealing to big multinational companies looking to set up shop, which, of course, can lead to a ton of foreign investment and economic growth. And here's the ultimate prize, the big payoff. More jobs and a buzzing economy means a surge in tax revenue for the government. And what can they do with all that extra cash? They can reinvest it. We're talking better roads, new schools, top-notch healthcare. It creates this virtuous cycle of development. That's the ideal outcome.
But, and you knew there was a but coming, right? This is a huge one. There's a really dangerous flip side here. That exact same large workforce, the single biggest promise, also carries the single biggest risk, massive widespread unemployment. If the economy can't create enough jobs for all these people, that amazing asset turns into a major liability, fast. And that brings us right to the other side of the coin, the demographic burden. This is the nightmare scenario where the sheer number of young people puts this unbelievable strain on a country's ability to provide even the most basic services. Just think about the staggering upfront cost. Before this generation can even think about working, the government has to fund a massive expansion of everything. We're talking more maternity wards for all the new babies, countless new schools to educate them, and an entire army of new teachers. Sometimes it even means investing in family planning to try and manage the growth. It is a monumental financial challenge. And this strain isn't felt the same way across the country, not at all. In the big cities, the pressure on housing becomes intense, which often leads to the explosion of slums and informal settlements. Out in the rural areas, the challenge is totally different. It shifts to the food supply, with a very real risk of malnutrition if farming can't keep up with all the new mouths to feed.
Now, you might think, okay, once this generation grows up, the problem is solved, right? Well, not exactly. The effects of a youth bulge don't just vanish. They create an echo, a ripple effect that reverberates for decades, completely reshaping the country's future.
This happens because of a concept called population momentum. It basically means that even if fertility rates drop, so people start having fewer kids, the overall population is still going to grow for a while. Why? Well, it's simple. Because you just have so many people entering the age where they can start families. That wave just has to run its course.
And if you look at this over the long term, you see this fascinating, almost ironic twist. Today's youth bulge, that becomes tomorrow's peak workforce. Great. But fast forward 50 years, and that same exact group creates an entirely new challenge, a massive aging population. The demographic problem doesn't go away. It just changes its clothes. And this brings a whole new list of demands. Now the country needs a really solid system for elderly care. And on a personal level, individual families start to feel a much heavier burden to support their older relatives. The challenge that started with building nurseries ends 5 decades later with trying to provide pensions and elder care. So after looking at both sides of this, we end up at this really critical point. A youth bulge isn't automatically a blessing, and it's not automatically a burden. It's a fork in the road. It really all comes down to this table right here. On one side, you've got these incredible opportunities, a bigger workforce, attracting global companies, more tax revenue. The potential is huge. But on the other side, the challenges are just as daunting. The risk of high unemployment, a massive strain on housing and food, the need for more schools and hospitals, and that looming issue of a future aging population. They're two sides of the very same coin.
And this is maybe the most crucial takeaway of all. None of this is inevitable. The outcome is not set in stone. Whether a youth bulge leads to an economic boom or a societal crisis is not a matter of fate. It is determined almost entirely by the choices a nation makes today, by smart policy, strategic investments, and really careful long-term planning.
So that leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? It's not a matter of if a nation can harness the power of its youth, but how. How can a country take what could be its single biggest challenge and turn it into its absolute greatest opportunity? Finding the right answer to that is one of the defining tests of our time, and literally the futures of millions hang in the balance.